Hey, Jonas here with 52 Things, and today we're gonna create something really cool, some really cool photo art using a drone. It's gonna look like this. But before we actually get into this, I want to show you where we are. Rob and I are right now filming in the forest behind us here. It's called Ichaway. It's a long-leafed pine forest, ecosystem that not a whole lot of people know about, but it's super awesome. So the concept that we're going to do here is not that difficult. It's something that a lot of people refer to as Droneception because it was inspired by the movie Inception, where they created this kind of warped reality world. We're going to find a spot where we have a straight road so that I can line up Rob at one end here and then add my drone right kind of behind him, slightly above him, shooting at an angle where you can see Rob and the road that goes kind of into infinity. And from here on, I'm gonna take a photograph. And then I'm gonna start moving the drone in and up as I'm also tilting the camera down slightly. And take another photograph, in and up, take another photograph. And eventually I'm gonna end up around here, shooting straight down. That's gonna be my last photo. So in recap, we're gonna want a shot from here, here, about here, here, and possibly one more straight down up here. Let's do this. This is where we're gonna do this. We found this spot, Rob and I, and this road is pretty straight. We're just gonna have to time this shot with in between trucks and cars. There's a lot of trucks going past here, but down there is a bridge and the river, and I think, hold it. All right, I think down there is gonna be a really cool spot for the last image. That's one that's gonna curve up and stand vertical. I think it's gonna be cool. All right, so we have imported the photos into the computer, and now we're just gonna pick a few of these and stitch them together into one photo. What do you think, Rob? This looks pretty good. All right, man, good night. Yeah. See ya. I have more photos here that I am going to need. I'm picking 5 in total that I will then stitch together into one image. Since they all have slight differences in color and contrast, I will first do some quick adjustments here to make them all match a bit better. I open up my 5 layers, and I'm going to use the one with Rob here and the long shadow as my base. I start by duplicating the layer and clear the background layer so I have a clean background. And since my final image is going to be a lot taller than my original photos, I will change the canvas size and make it about twice as tall. And I drag the other 4 layers in and arrange them in order with my last photo on top, the one that I'm shooting straight down. In fact, I have 2 photos here that I shoot straight down. I'm just going to label all of the layers 1 to 5. We're going to start with layer 1 and 2 and try to line them up as good as possible. And my aim is to have the lines on the road match perfectly. I use the transform tool first, Command T for short. And then I right click to play with the perspective, which allows me to drag out the bottom, the width of the road. And then to fine adjust, I right click again and switch to the warp tool. This allows me to bend the line slightly, which is kind of cool. The next step is to fade out the edge between the layers to make them blend together. And we do that best by adding a layer mask down here to the top layer. Okay, so what's really cool with the layer mask is that I can actually start sort of fading out this edge. I can take out parts of this layer without actually erasing it. So what I mean by that is if I use the brush tool on this layer with the layer mask highlighted and have it set so that I click up, see this, so I have the background color, have it set to black, then if I start painting with the brush over the edge, then I'm kind of erasing part of this layer. It's going to look the same as if I'm using the eraser tool, but the difference is that I'm just erasing on the layer mask. So if I go back and I switch it back to the white here, which is my foreground, and I paint over it again, I'm making it come back. So instead of actually erasing the layer, I'm just painting the layer mask, which is really handy because if you mess something up, you can always redo it by just reversing the action. I'm gonna highlight this layer again, start fading out this edge. A good thing to do is to drop the opacity and flow to, I like to use about 50% to make the fade softer. And also continuously keep readjusting the alignment here with transform and warp tool. And remember that with the layer mask, you can always get back what you took out by reversing the action. Just highlight the layer mask, choose the brush tool, and switch between foreground and background. As you can see, the colors don't match perfectly now, but that is something I can fix in the end. When you feel happy with the first two layers, simply do the same thing with the next layer. Align, Command T for transform, right click for perspective and warp tools. To make the dirt road on the left match, I highlight only one section of the layer with the marquee tool, shortcut M, and then use transform and warp tools on only that section. One thing to be aware of though, if you drag the edges of that selection, you will create a sort of a tear in the layer, but that is something you can easily fill in again using the clone stamp tool, shortcut S. Then just like before, add a layer mask, fade out the edge with the brush tool. Cool, that looks pretty good. Okay, next one. I have two photos shot straight down, and the reason for that was that I was going to try and make the wall, the vertical segment, appear taller. So I will first work on these two individually and try to match them to make that whole vertical segment. I simply go through the whole process again, lining them up and blending, just like we did before, and then I create a group down here for these two layers, which makes it easier to move them around as a unit rather than individual layers. And then just like before, add a layer mask, but instead this time do it to the group, and then do the same thing again, create a smooth nice fade between the group and the layer below. Alright, final adjustment stage. First I'm going to go over and make sure I fix all of the tears in the layers created by my transforms. Use the clone stamp tool to clone a nearby area by holding in the Alt key and clicking, and then paint over the area I want to fill in. Just make sure you're working on the right layers since they're all kind of fading into each other at this point. Lastly, I go and I make color, exposure, and contrast adjustments to the different layers so they all match. For each layer, I create one or more adjustment layers to do the changes, and then I right-click the adjustment layer and choose Create Clipping Mask. That means the mask will only affect the layer directly under it and not all of the layers under it, which is really good. Last, crop the image to a good size, do the last fine-tuning, and then we're done. So I hope that gave all of you drone flyers out there some fun ideas to try out over the weekend. This is actually not that difficult, so go ahead and try it out. It's really fun. I want to thank all of our patrons for supporting our work, supporting what we do. Without your help, we wouldn't be able to do this. I also want to throw out a big thank you to the Jones Center at Itchaway. This longleaf pine forest is awesome. A lot of great biodiversity. The forest is beautiful. And it's a really interesting habitat that used to cover a lot of the southern USA and now only remains in kind of these little patches around the south. And surprisingly, this is a habitat that depends on forest fires to remain biodiverse. And we have a video coming out on this soon, so stay tuned for that as well. Thanks for watching and stay tuned for the video coming out next week.